Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Homeschool Minnesota. Homeschool Minnesota podcast is an outreach of Minnesota Association of Christian Home Educators, MÂCHÉ. We're so glad you guys are with us today. One of the fastest growing segments of homeschoolers in Minnesota are children who are struggling in the special ed department. There's a lot going on in our state, and we all know that. And we don't need to get into it. But according to the Minnesota Department of Education 2025 school year test scores showed that only 49.6% of students tested at or exceeded reading standards, which was down from the previous year. We can see a decline in reading proficiency in public schools happening over the past 5 years. What do you do if you are a homeschooling family and your child struggles with reading? Well, today we have help for you. Please welcome Faye Bankler-Cassell from Home Reading Coach. So we just want to have a chance to talk with her, pick her brain, ask her a lot of questions. So welcome, Faye. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
And you're from the great state of Texas.
I'm from Texas. I've lived all over the U.S. Yeah, I'm born and raised in San Antonio, and that's where I am right now.
Nice. A little warmer there than it is here today. So
Yes.
we're so grateful that you took a time to come on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like who you are, how long you've been doing this, and why this was something that just really resonated with you when you chose what you wanted to do with your life?
Sure, of course. So I studied early childhood education and special education in graduate school, and that is where my path began. And I have done that in 3 or 4 states. Um, and have always been passionate about early childhood inclusion. And so that was my work passion. When I had my son, uh I realized really early on that there were a lot of developmental delays. The poor little guy,
Oh,
he just had a mom who knew too much. So I had him in speech therapy, occupational therapy. I mean, he was one, barely one, and he was starting speech therapy because I realized that he wasn't babbling. And so as he was going into kindergarten, I had told my husband, there's going to be something. Maybe he's dyslexic. Like I feel pretty confident that reading's going to be hard. So I kind of had it in the back of my brain that I really wanted to study dyslexia and make that happen. Well, sure enough, he had a hard time. In kindergarten, it was not coming together for him. And so I pulled on, at that point, I hadn't been a dyslexia therapist and I hadn't studied it, but I was gearing up to. And I really pulled on my special education background and techniques and skills, and I got him launched. And then it did start coming together for him. After I got him launched, the school was able to take over and keep him going. So then I enrolled in my dyslexia therapy course, and then I moved into the elementary school age, and I was working with a lot of kiddos with different learning disabilities and teaching them to read, and then also privately. So then we fast forward to now, which is that nationwide 69, almost 70% of fourth graders are not proficient readers in public schools.
wow.
And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. And every week I'm talking to parents who they can't get their child tested, the school's refusing, or they can't get the services because their child isn't failing enough, or they're getting services, but the person who's providing the services is not providing appropriate, adequate services or is really not trained. So then what happens is parents have to make up the difference. It could be financially, where they're paying. I mean, listen, I'm in Texas, and so regionally, I'm less than you would get in, let's say, a coastal state. But I charge $80 an hour, and we're talking about kids who come to me 3 to 5 times a week for 2 years
It's an
to go through
investment.
a dyslexia, right?
Yep.
And so families are spending all this time fighting schools to get services. So I meet this mom, and for 2 years, she's calling me on and off, explaining where she is in the fight and is she going to work with me? What is she going to do? And I am sitting there like, what am I going to do? Like, how is she going to get help? This kid. Because the other thing that's really vital for families to know is that if your child has reading struggles and they're in the first grade age group and you start intervening then, you have a 90 to 95% chance of success, meaning that
Wow.
they will be reading proficient on grade level and maintain it
Yeah.
through their schoolings. Whereas if you wait until third or fourth grade, which was what was happening with this woman because she's spending 2 years fighting, the success rate drops to 40 to 45%. And it can take up to 4 times as long of an intervention to
Well,
get them there.
and the other thing that I wanna just kinda not to interrupt, I'm so sorry, but just wanted to put this in there, is that this test scores in Minnesota come from 3rd graders. So, they're not actually testing the younger kids in their proficiency and their ability to read. And, you've got kids who they know how to fake it till they make it, you know?
So you do,
Ye
you do. The really, really bright kids, those kids who they're able to fake it until about 3rd grade and then it
Right.
starts to come apart. Um a lot of states do screenings, but what I find that happens, and I've got a little kiddo that I'm
Sure.
working with here in San Antonio. The school came back and said, but she hasn't failed anything in first grade. And, so they are testing kids,
Sure.
but they're not necessarily tests to determine dyslexia. And you have to think about what's actually happening in the context of the
Yeah.
test. So it's not going to pick up on it because this girl is very bright.
Yeah.
And also in first grade, the questions and answers get read to you, and one of the reading passages of the 2 reading passages, and she's bright enough to figure out how to sort of work a way
Sure.
around the second passage. So, if you are utilizing things that aren't developed to find dyslexia and you're using that as grounds to stand on, that's another reason that kids just get pushed up.
Yeah.
Um, so so I really hit a point where, and so this mom did ultimately get services for her kid. She spent about 2 years fighting. She did remarkable things to do it. And I asked her, I said, how long? She's the primary earner in her family. I asked her, how many hours do you think you spent to get to this point? And she said 200 hours upwards. And I was like, that is the dyslexia intervention, So I started really kind of puzzling out, how can I get parents to get started? I want kids to start when their brains are really pliable, and I want the families to not go broke. And, I need these kids to get what they need. And so I started doing home reading coach, and, 2 kind of prongs of that. The one is just getting families some information. What is dyslexia? What are the signs? What do I do? Where do I find people? That kind of stuff. The other is that I'm launching this reading breakthrough program, and it is designed. It's it's priced at $97, but honestly, the people on the wait list and everything, I'm doing additional discounts for the launch. That's the first 13 weeks, and it is 13 weeks, 50 something lessons that lay the whole foundation. And I do videos for the parents, right? So I script it and I teach them how to do it. And once you get the rhythm down, you're just plugging in the new sounds or the new learning, but it kind of has a natural flow that is repeatable. So especially at the beginning, I
Yeah.
feel like just to get, if they're waiting on testing or if they're trying to make it happen with the school, they've got something that they can do at home. If they're ready to homeschool, then they've got something that's specific to kids with reading disabilities.
Yeah.
And because I will say I do work with homeschooling families, and I am peripherally familiar with some homeschool curriculums, but not enough to talk to them. But I can tell you nationally, the schools are not using curriculums that are aligned with the science of reading. And so I would guess that there's going to be some of that in
Yeah.
homeschool curriculums as
Yeah.
well
Well,
that just are not as
yeah.
solid.
I think it's easier for homeschooling families sometimes to spot issues because they're with their kids 24/7 and they're not distracted by 24 other kids in the classroom. It's one child and they're like, "Okay, this should be easier for you. Something's not right." What are some red flags that parents can
Sure.
see in reading development with their children? You said you noticed your son already before he was 1 years old that there were things. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we learned what those things were and could get that intervention, start working with them on some things just at home, little things that
Of
we can
course.
do. I know that crawling is very important for reading development, which is
Yes,
interesting.
crawling, gross motor work, what they call crossing the midline. So if you think about an elbow on an opposite knee, not that that's what you're going to be doing with a 2-year-old, but things that have you reaching in different directions
Yeah.
is great. A lot of kids are really have very weak fine motor these days. So all those monkey bars, walking on your hands, playing with the dough and clay and all those things are great. If your child has any kind of speech or language delay, you need to be vigilant.
Yeah.
You really want to be vigilant. So, if you have insurance that covers speech therapy and you can do that, do that. It's definitely worth it. And you want to be on the lookout in the future because dyslexia is rooted in a phonological issue. So hearing the sounds, manipulating the sounds in words and applying it, mapping it to written text. So any kid who has a speech or language delay is automatically should be considered at risk, kind of on high alert. And that was the case with my son. He had so many motor delays. The first time that he clapped his hands, he was watching his hands and it was like he was
Oh,
moving a mountain to bring them together.
good for
So
him for
he had
doing it
so many
though.
motor
Yeah.
and speech issues. I already was like, this is bound to be, something. Um, so then I would say kind of next level is your child learning their letters? The first letters usually that they want to learn are the letters of their name, or mom's name or a sibling's name or something like that. So are they learning their letters? Can they start attaching letter and sounds? So M says all those early childhood nursery rhymes, rhyming books, can they pick out the rhymes? So if you're reading the book and which 2 words rhyme, or here are 3 words, which words rhyme, later can they generate rhymes? But even just identifying, and I've worked with fourth graders who cannot pick out a rhyme. And again, it tracks back to hearing those sounds and understanding them. Things like, let's play Guess My Word. I see M, let me try it again.
Okay.
I see man, pushing it together, or dog, pushing it together and guessing dog, and then taking a word and taking it apart. Cat, cat. So can they do that? Can they identify that initial sound of a word and then maybe drop it? So if we say bright, but I drop the b, it's right. If I say red, but I take out the and put in b, it's bed. So those kinds of playing with sounds, playing with compound words, light bulb, take away the bulb, you've got light. Taking away syllables, manipulating syllables, those sorts of things. Those are all really good indicators. Kids don't have to be reading yet for us to have really good information that shows us, yeah, we need to start intervening this way. The dyslexia therapy intervention starts on a phonological level because that's the foundation you have to build up. So science shows us 92%, we can identify with 92% accuracy at age 5.5. But honestly, they can do brain scans and tell a kid,
Yeah.
from baby, because
Yeah.
their brains are wired in a particular way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you are a parent and you're listening to this and you're like, okay, my child did have some of those issues, and now I'm trying to teach them reading and we're struggling really hard. What are some practical things that families can do to help their children? And then also, can you give us a real, like, kind of like you have a free dyslexia roadmap for families on your website. And so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want you
I
to talk
do.
about that a little bit too and how that helps families and what does that mean for
Sure.
a parent who wants to take that on. And remembering, guys, that reading is so fundamental. If your child is not a proficient reader, they will always struggle in life. They will. Everything is
They
about
will.
reading. And so you can't put enough time, too much time into
No,
this.
I mean, and honestly, the data and the studies about not being a proficient reader
Yes.
as an adult they're scary.
Yes.
I mean, they have a number of how much less per year you're going to earn or what your odds
Yeah.
are of incarceration or that sort of thing. Now, I believe that this homeschooling crowd
Yeah.
is probably, I want to believe, right? The kids are really getting so much quality family time and guidance that
Right.
incarceration levels are not going to be the averages. But yeah, it's some really scary stuff.
We don't see
So
our kids struggle, though. We want them to be able to reach the very pinnacle of what they can reach.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, every kid deserves to
Absolutely.
learn at
Yep.
their maximum potential. So it's a free mini ebook. It's the Dyslexia Roadmap for Families. They can find a link to it on my website, which is
We'll
homereadingcoach.com.
link it
They
in the
can find
description of the
me.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they can find me on my
Yep.
socials, on Instagram and Facebook. But basically, what I was noticing was a lot of families will come on to different Facebook groups, whether it's a homeschooling group or a dyslexia group, and just sort of say, oh, something's going on, and ask for information. And sometimes the information they were getting back was not really high quality
Yeah.
information or some lingering misinformation
Sure.
would continue. And that's natural. It's the internet. So I decided to just sort of jot down all of those frequently asked questions and respond to them. So it covers a lot of things: where to go and how to get tested, where might I find free or low cost resources, if I do want to pay somebody to intervene, where do I find a person, how do I know that they're qualified, if I want to keep my kid in school, how do I get them tests, how do I advocate, what are the accommodations I might want to ask for, where are the parent groups that I want to connect with. So really, just my goal is just to kind of get them started on high quality resources. Here are the books that I always am recommending to families. Here are the parent organizations that I'm always going to tell you to check out. Because I just want to make sure that a starting place is in the hands of families, that they have some good people to go to, because it's overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming to realize. And I am a parent of one child who has a 504 plan and one child who has an IEP plan, and I've been doing this 20 years. So it's overwhelming,
Yeah, it's a
to
lot.
feel like even my own kid, I had to pull her from school for a while, and her particular disability is not one that is in my wheelhouse. So I was in the same boat
Yeah.
of like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to give them a place, a soft landing spot to
I
kind of
love that.
gather and collect their thoughts.
I
Yeah.
love that. It can be so overwhelming for parents just to homeschool.
Huh?
Especially if this is something like a lot of us, we started homeschooling because we just knew from the very beginning that's what we wanted to do with our families.
Right.
That was the
Hmm.
that was the trajectory. But these days, a lot of families that are homeschooling are not homeschooling because that's what they always felt they wanted to do. They're homeschooling because they don't have another option. And they
Yes.
felt like for whatever reason, every other option was off to them, and this is the only one that's presented, and now here I am, and I've got a child who is struggling. What do I do? And so, um, I love that you have YouTube videos as well
Yes, I
that talk
do.
about that. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah. So my YouTube channel is Teach My Child to Read, and there are links to it from my website. And I'm just kind of getting it off the ground because I I do want to have a space where I can do kind of longer discussions, deep
Sure.
dives. And it's in its earlier stages, so at this point it has been a little more informational than kind of hands-on, here's what this looks like and how we do it.
Sure.
Uh, but but I wanted to be responsive to that need. So, for example, I did a 3-part video with some licensed psychologists who are former licensed school psychologists who really walk through public versus private evaluations, what happens in them, just a variety of
Takes the
questions
mystery
that
out of
families
it.
always want to know.
Mhm.
And then getting into kind of
Yeah.
what does multisensory instruction mean? What is dyslexia therapy? And ultimately to, yes, start showing families like here are some different tools and things. I have also noticed that trend where a lot of the families that I see that are choosing to homeschool who had not had a vision of it for their family are often parents of kids who have a learning disability or on the autism spectrum. So the 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 reading breakthrough program is a curriculum because it's there's lots of opportunities to like Pinterest and hodgepodge and pull together different activities, and those are very valuable to do. But I also feel like you need like you,
Yeah.
if somebody's struggling, you want to do something that is systematic and sequential that builds on top of each other so that you don't miss, right, any of those
Right.
gaps.
Well,
So that I do both,
yeah,
right?
and as
The
a
YouTube is
parent
for the hodgepodge and then yeah.
but as a parent, the more resources you have speaking to what it is that you think your child might be struggling with, the more power is in your hands. You know what questions to ask. You go into an appointment knowing what to expect. So it takes the mystery out of what's it going to look like when I go to speech therapy with my child, or what's it going to look like to get a reading specialist? What are some things I should know? You're taking that mystery out. So the parent, the control is in their hands where it really belongs, to be honest.
Does. I mean, and even for families who are staying in school, um, I am developing and pointing them to different resources so that they can assess where their kids are. Because if you are not the one doing the intervention, you want to be the one making sure that the interventions are actually doing what they purport to do and that your
Yeah.
child is making progress. So I am in agreement with you that no matter if that parents need options, that there is no one way that it needs to happen because every family is different. Every family has different, landscapes financially,
Yeah.
socially, in their faith. Like they have a variety of things that they're balancing. And I'm not going to tell them which one is most important.
Yep.
But I think that so in addition to having those options, what I do really want families to have is feeling like I know where my kid is right now. I know what we're shooting for, and I can be tracking
Yeah.
that they're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
I that power needs to be in their hands.
Absolutely. What do you say this is my last question for you. I just want you to know. I have a lot of questions, but this is my last one. What do you say well, it's my second to last one, I'm not gonna lie. What do you say to the parent who maybe didn't like, they didn't catch that reading struggle early and now feels like they're behind and kinda maybe feels like they may have let their child down a little bit? Because you're talking about, like, the 90% if you catch it when it's early and then as opposed to 40%, like, just a couple years later, and that parent is going, "It's already been a few years, and I just didn't even know what to look for, and have I destroyed any chance my child has?" And first of all, I wanna remind you that as a homeschooling parent, the stats are a little different for you because
That's
your
what I was
child's
going to
getting
say.
that
I was just
one-on-one.
about to say
Oh, okay,
that.
well, I'm stealing your thunder. Go, Faye.
Yeah, no, I was going to say you have to think about how the data was taken, right? It was taken from kids in schools, public schools.
Yeah.
So it's going to be different than a child working one-on-one or 2 or 3-on-1
Right.
at home in a quiet environment. Yes, the brain is not as plastic, but the child is also not navigating the overwhelm of a school environment. So I think that it's important to recognize that if you're able to do this with your child and for your child and your family, you've already upped your odds and done so
Yeah.
much for them.
Yeah.
I just think that parents and everybody need to give themselves grace. I mean,
I
you
agree.
you have a child and you never know. It can be just as challenging, believe it or not, to be the parent of a prodigy as to be a parent of a kid with a variety of disabilities because there's no playbook. There's just every child is unique. So I would really tell families, you have to. I pray that you let it go, like
Yeah.
let go of the guilt
Yeah.
because you're already providing so much more. And I think that there's a difference in going in there and working on it yourself or under the guidance of a coach or bringing somebody else who's who's qualified, who can word I want to say. I want to say like modulate, but who can adapt and who can be prescriptive to your child because they're not going through a rote program. People will ask me about what about the like dyslexia computer things. And my issue with that is I'm okay with that sort of stuff being supplemental, but the way that I work with kids is I work with kids who get the answer right, but not because they understand the concept, but because they're so smart to know that, like, oh, a worded like that isn't going to end in I because English words don't end in I. So they guess the right thing. So you want that person that's really sitting down and adapting to the child and being diagnostic and prescriptive. And a parent's able to do that. In a dyslexia classroom in a public school, not necessarily able to do that. The other trend that does happen, and so you can feel good about yourself, is a, I'm on a lot of groups where dyslexia therapists are coming on and posting anonymously, trying to figure out what to do because in their district and their school, the school is setting them up so that they cannot implement with fidelity, meaning that they have a great program to do, but it's validated for this many minutes a week, this many sessions, this amount of kids. And if the group keeps growing and growing and growing and kids are being added throughout the year, they know that they're lowering,
The
right, the
standard.
the
Yeah.
chances of
Yeah.
the kids succeeding. So you're you're already like a head above everybody is
Yeah.
is basically what I
That's
want to
good to
say.
hear. Yeah, so calm down, mom and dad, it's fine, you'll be
Yeah.
fine.
It's a very long-winded. You're already
You
in the
already
lead.
made the right decision by pulling them out and taking it on yourself. You can do
Yeah,
this.
if that's the right thing for you. I mean,
Yep.
listen, here's the thing about education in America
Yeah,
is it is a lottery.
it is.
And there are families that hit the jackpot, and I am thrilled for them. If that's what they wanted and they hit the jackpot, excellent. I have worked with teachers that I would beg to work with my children. Now, I interview the school when they interview me. So, I actually had this woman in an interview say, "We're interviewing you. You are not interviewing us." And I was like, "I think we're done here."
Yeah. So that
Because
that gives me everything I need to know.
I'm not going to work with you until I'm satisfied that, we're doing the right things here. But it's a it is. It's a lottery. You can hit the jackpot. Some families really do. But unfortunately, way too many kids are just not getting
Falling through the
jackpot.
cracks. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So it
So
is.
my last question for real. Any last minute advice to parents that are listening right now? Just one thing that they can today that they can take in and go, "Okay, this is gonna be fine."
Yeah. I think that I think that if your child is reading words on a page. I want you to make sure that they are actually reading the word and not guessing from the pictures. So if the word is dog and they see an image and they say puppy, or if the word is home, I see the H there and they guess house, then I want you to pause and dig deeper and just see that as a warning sign because your kid's really bright. Your kid's really bright. And is picking up from context clues, but maybe not reading. So I do want to put that out there because that is one signal that people can miss. And then it's going right back to not assuming. So today you would take out all the letters of the alphabet and you would scramble them up and have them touch and name each letter and make sure they know them, and have them scramble them up and have them touch and make the sound of each letter and make sure they know them, because sometimes it just kind of slips through there that you didn't even realize that they don't know. Those letter confusions, I don't want you to be worried about them if your kid's kind of under 7.5. It is, let's say 7. It is appropriate for the B's and the D's and the P's and the Q's to be confusing.
Sure.
If they are beyond that, then you want to start going back to making sure and picking out the letters in different fonts, different prints. You've got capital, you've got lowercase, you've got this. So go back, make sure they know their sounds, and then just see how you do on CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant words. And then start playing with the sounds and change just the first sound, and then after they're good at that, change just the last sound, and then go for the middle sound.
Yeah.
And see where you are, because there's probably a good chance you're going to pick up that they need you to reinforce any of those skills.
So good. Well, we just thank you so much, Faye, for coming on today and talking about your program. Again, to my listeners, everything will be in the description of the podcast. You will easily find Faye's programs there, the links to everything there. So we want you guys to find her because she's got some really good things. And her website is just a wealth of knowledge. And, this is our kids' future. Reading is a big part of it. We just want to invest in our children. It doesn't do good to buy a whole language arts program if your child can't even do it. It's better to invest in the reading intervention and to invest there. Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, and I know that was your final question, but I do want to say.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Any sort of curriculum generally, unless it's written for an intervention, is kind of that. This is to meet the needs of the general audience.
Exactly.
And if that were going to work for your child, it probably would have worked.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you're right. You do want to kind of up the ante and look for something that's narrowing in on kids who need more.
And that's what you'll find on Faye's website. So thank you so much, Faye, for being a part of it. And I want to thank my listeners for being here. I hope this was helpful to you. You can do this, Mom and Dad. You absolutely can. There's so many good resources out there for you to be able to educate your child well. You could do it. So thank you, Faye, so much for being a part of today. And for my listeners, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.